Charlotte. Charlotte was a resolute silhouette on the gray path. Her black coat flared sharply from her small waist, short-cut raven hair raised in small tufts in the prevailing wind. She had dropped her battered leather case beside her, the pair of them frozen indefinitely before the bleak fortress before them. Linton's School for Wayward Girls. For Nellie, it was the best she could now do for her daughter, including withholding parts of her own history, her own blood. She turned her battered Volkswagen down the ill-used road back to civilization and did not look back. Dear Mama, that day you left me there on the path, I had never felt so at home. The wind-swept heath and gray rock, I found a vast improvement on the cultured mutations people force on their homescapes. The cold stone and gray sky are perfect reflections of my soul. Thank you. Miss Heath asked me directly why I was there. Shouldn't she have known? I was sure I arrived with a documented history of my failure to socialize, my tendency to cruelty, my disconnection from those around me. These I did not see myself as problems. I still do not. I am not fond of others, so why should I pretend? I killed the cat. I said, "How did you kill the cat?" I squeezed it around its neck until it stopped fighting. Why did you do this? I was fascinated. I would like to do this to Toby, so I experimented. Blunt honesty is something I have never had an issue with. Who is Toby? Toby sat next to me in class. He called me witch. He drew on my work. He was very annoying. How did you feel about your experiment? I was disappointed I killed the cat. It was a good cat. Mother was fond of it. But it made me realize that doing this to Toby would be very satisfying. After our chat, she led me upstairs to a dismal passage that ran the length of the mansion. Was it grand once? The chandeliers and worn remains of a richly patterned runner suggested it may have been. More concerning to me now was who cleaned this place. Cobwebs hung in dust-laden drifts. Mold spores assailed my nostrils. I felt she wished to lead me further, but one door asked me to stop. That one called for me. Miss Heath shrugged her shoulders. They are all the same, and only 7 of you here. She rattled through her fat keychain, citing of some sort of identifier until she found the right one. It is a room refreshingly devoid of frills. A simple bed lay beneath a small window. Against the wall, a plain oak table, laden with age, served as the key feature. I laid my hand upon it and felt a thrill of time and history resonate from its depths. It was this, not the room that called me. Miss Heath recoiled. I think it was because I smiled. So I smiled wider. How interesting a smile feels. Was it my first? I am not sure. Dinner is at 6 p.m. sharp, downstairs to your left. A barked imperative, and she was gone. I arrived at dinner at 6:05. There sat 6 girls, 2 teachers, and a pale man whom I was to learn would be my counselor. Lily Linton, they call him. We are meant to sit at a new place each evening. However, he only barks at us to move if we raise a voice, or try and stab each other. Yes, Linton is also the name of the manor. It seems he is of the blood of its original occupants. Suitable blood to soak the mahogany floors. I ignored Linton's reproof at my lateness. It was my peers I wished to assess. In tests, I immediately saw my like. This did not mean we would get on. Martha is quite mad. Her eyes looked as to other worlds. I soon learned that she rarely spoke, but it was good to keep all sharp items clear of her reach. Clara and Betsy were rosy-cheeked and chatty. They offered instant welcome and a seat beside them. I ignored them, registering their flash of eye contact and its intended threat to myself. Harriet stared at me until hunger overcame her. She does not belong here. She has anger issues. These can be solved. Bella was like Martha on one day, quite feral. But the next would chat and giggle with Clara and Betsy. Then there was Kat. Kat sits at the same spot each day, in the middle of our table. She may have been a chunk of stone of the mansion itself, topped by black hair that sat in thick clumps. Hacked at but never brushed. She had a face that on looking at you instantly recognized bully, and eyes that determine that this girl is deranged, and there is no changing this state. She would have a lot of blood. We have lessons for the large part of each day. Few of us, with the exception of Kat, struggle with the lessons. We attend counseling. Bar the odd incident, we are dutiful. We are good, most of us, at doing what we need to do. Kat likes to snatch food, shout low-grade abuse, answer back when there is nothing to answer back to. Occasionally, a girl will respond in similar crudity or try to stab her with the nearest vaguely pointy object. She's an ox, a waste of time, but in a way, she is a break in monotony that even for me can become an irritation. I never answer back and have no urge to strangle her. I have new visions. Linton is happy with me. He thinks I have a friend. To have a friend is apparently a cure. Tess and I sit together consistently. He does not notice that we do not engage with each other, and that this is the one reason we stay close. We are the same. Linton likes her. She has hair of pale urine and skin like snow before that urine hits it. I imagine how his pale eyes would bulge if a sharp object were to pierce his heart. I cannot decide if I feel protection for her, or a sense of pleasure in justification at Linton's looming ill fate. Feelings are too odd, better put aside. What is important is that I am not alone in my room. My bed sits undisturbed. I sleep each night with my head on my desk, on the ancient oak. It teaches me. The desk gifts a clarity of dreams I have never known. Woman in a forest of oak around a fire. Women drenched in blood. So much blood. I reached for it, but it eluded me. The oak showed me faces. It showed me witches. It showed me grandmama. It showed me you. I know now. Toby was right. It showed me all its secrets. Why this school mother? Tess was not my fault. I would have spared Tess. Tess made her own decision. Kat thought it was amusing, a sideshow. The girls clapped in delight at Kat's rendition of the event. We were sent to our rooms early. I felt something, mother, a coldness. I know I have always been cold, but this was different. I also felt purpose. I gave my purpose to the oak, and the oak gave me a splinter of itself. Not just a splinter of oak, a splinter of ages, a splinter of a tree that had been present in ancient rituals, a splinter of my own blood heritage. I shall see you very soon, Mother. Regards. The Volkswagen backfired to a halt, sending resting birds into a flurry of panic. Totally unflurried, Charlotte stood waiting on the gray path, her leather bag on one hand, a blood-stained shaft of oak in her other. It would be a week hence that Nellie would read her letter. An ancient ill was resolved. Her daughter had found herself. Part 1. Hey, it's a garlic fest. It is clear Joseph was not happy with the overwhelming flavor of the extra garlic in his dinner. He tried a little bread, a little salad in trepidation. Yummy. Even the salad is garlicy. Now the sarcasm is evident in his smile and in his intonation. Well, like it or not, I'm doing the garlic thing. Sarah said defensively. I am not all superstitious, but a little garlic and a few good spells wouldn't harm. You remember what those people said? What if there is something called unrequited souls? She sounded confident that she isn't superstitious. Did you seriously believe those people? Come on, you are scaring the children. And this food! Joseph looked at the food in annoyance, probably contemplating if he should drive to the chip shop. But, Mom says people believe in silly things, said the little boy, concentrating on the plate, mostly moving his fork around the food. Now, Alvin, your mom should meet our mother. Joseph looked at Daniel humorously. His droll eyes sparkled, and he winked at Daniel. Daniel grinned at Dad, sharing the humor, and promptly retreated, looking at Mum's face that said, So you are taking his side again? Daniel looked at his friend beside him at the dining table to share the humor, but he was still concentrating on the plate of food, moving his fork. Daya, Daniel's older sister, pressed her lips, trying to hold a loud laughter, and shared a discreet smirk with Dad. She obviously didn't believe in the garlic factor. Well, the cynicism at the dining table was not discreet. Sarah knew she was overreacting with what the people said about the house being haunted by the souls of the Hat family. They said the house didn't get sold because people believe the Hats still live here. Reflecting on it, she realized it really was silly of her to believe in such things. Fine, she said. Extra garlic is off the menu then. And from the front door? Daya asked sarcastically. Yes, off the front door. And from the hallway, from the living room, from my lunchbox. Daya continued sarcastically. That's enough, Joseph interrupted Daya, feeling that Sarah might be feeling a little bullied by them by now. He grabbed her hand. We're just saying, these are just tales. Let's relax, right? I know they just got to me. I don't know why people say things like that. Sarah is now annoyed at the people of the village for implanting these superstitions in her. Actually, I'm glad they keep saying things like these to the visitors. Think about it. How else would you have found a mansion like this in 1995? Joseph tried to show the positive side of having neighbors with strange beliefs. Isn't this what you have always wanted? A gorgeous country house in Warwickshire with acres of land. Perhaps having weird neighbor was our destiny, right? Joseph laughed at the conclusion he just came up with. Sarah's dreams resonated with her. You are right. It was my fantasy. It is such a beautiful place. I can't believe we got this in this price. I was just so overwhelmed. I'm just going to stop worrying about these silly stories. I mean, the Hat lived here in the 17th century. Sarah mocked herself. Yeah, the Hat probably bored by now. Daniels laughed. His friend rolled his eyes and joined the laughter. You think they would be? Yeah, they must be by now. Sarah joined them with a slight embarrassment. I'll spend the weekend with you, Mum, and you can show me how to do the chutneys and jams you said you wanted to. Daya quickly glanced at her dad and found him winking at her with approval. Sarah looked overwhelmed with happiness with such changes of plans the party girl just made. Joseph cast his gaze of contentment on his wife and daughter. Perhaps this is what she needs. She has been feeling lonely lately, he contemplated. Now that all was sorted, Joseph could go through the garlic fest for tonight. A spooky growling noise interrupted the short silence at the table. They all looked towards the living room door. A pair of glossy, scorching eyes was looking at them, like a couple of transparent marbles sitting in front of a set of headlights. I don't know what's with Socrates. He wouldn't come in the dining room. And I've even put some meat on his bowl. Daya indicated at Socrates' food bowl on the floor. He has been quite aggressive this evening, Sarah observed. Perhaps it is the garlic, trotted Alvin. Everyone burst into laughter. Socrates seemed highly offended. He fluffed up. Piloerection made him look double the size. He was clearly not bemused. Part 2. Dia joined her mom that Saturday morning. She knew this would make Mom really happy. Sarah asked Dia to get the glass jars she washed, dried and left in the pantry. She was looking forward to making chutneys and jams together. She may involve Daniel too. Sarah heard a loud shattering noise from the pantry. She ran to check. It was obvious Dia dropped the jars. Joseph and Daniel, who heard the noise from the yard, ran to the pantry too. They were playing soldiers. Alvin just joined them. "It's all right, my love," said Sarah, looking at Dia sitting on the floor in the midst of the broken glasses. She was glaring at them with vacuous glacial eyes. Her body was void of any motion. "It's okay, honey. It was just an accident," Joseph comforted as he planned to slowly lug her out of the situation. She was obviously in a shock. Immotile sat frozen. She slowly started to open her mouth. Her stony eyes begun to widen. Sarah and Daniel screeched in horror. Dia's mouth was filled with crushed sparkling glasses. Joseph was terrified in horror. "Honey, don't swallow anything. Just stay there," said Joseph, and sat beside Dia. He asked Sarah to hold her mouth open as he carefully took the glasses out of her mouth, one by one, making sure they don't cut her inside. "It's okay, Dia. Don't swallow." A petrified but brave Daniel kept prompting Dia. Alvin was at the doorway with a deadpan expression. It was shocking for both children. That evening, Dia said she saw a lady pushing the jars on the floor, and she held her mouth open and put the glasses in her mouth. "You were hallucinating," Joseph explained, hugging her in the hospital bed. "You were in shock and you were really scared." "I'm cool. But I didn't want to drop the jars." "I know, my love." Sarah hugged her, feeling so relieved that she was okay. Part 3. Joseph loved photography, and it was a fine day for it. The house had opulent opportunity to take great photographs. Such unadulterated nature. If only these old Tress could talk, he wondered. Alvin and Daniel were playing. Socrates was looking at them with a thumping tail. Joseph walked around and took lots of pictures. He walked far beyond the play area in the back of the manor house to the graveyard. He thought it was just a tale by the crazy villagers, but he found 3 tombstones almost buried in the ground, covered in leaves. How extraordinary, he thought. He coarsely moved some leaves and took a few photos. He walked back to check on the boys. He took photos of them playing together. Alvin was still struggling to make friends with Socrates. He kept trying to embrace the cat, but the cat kept wiggling himself out, hissing and huffing. "He will get used to you." Daniel wanted to give some hope to the frustrated Alvin. "Don't go far, boys." Joseph instructed the boys and went inside. Socrates followed him to the kitchen. Sarah was prepping the lunch. Dia plated some food for Socrates. "We like eating alone these days." She mocked at the cat's recent changes of behavior. They suddenly heard Daniel yelping, "Mummy." They all ran outside the kitchen, including Socrates. They saw Alvin knocking on a tree trunk, shrieking, trembling, "Are you all right?" They could not see Daniel anywhere or hear him. Sarah and Dia started to shout out his name. They were howling. Not knowing what's happening, they feared their worst nightmare. Joseph gently held Alvin's shoulders and turned him towards him and calmly asked, "Son, what happened? Tell me, where is Dan?" Alvin was shaking. "I didn't want it to happen. I didn't wish it." He was shaking with fear and penitence. "We were climbing trees. Dan climbed even higher and then..." He looked up and pointed at the top of the tree. "Then what happened?" "Well, I didn't stop him." Daniel looked at Joseph. "He fell inside." He pointed at the tree. Joseph immediately worked out the tree was hollow. There was hope, no matter how tall the tree was, how far Daniel had fallen. He called the fire brigade, who located Daniel at the bottom of the trunk. They had to cut the top of the tree and rescue a very injured little boy. Daniel broke his collarbones and his left arm. The doctor told them they were extremely lucky that Daniel was alive. It seemed Daniel would be spending the summer in bandages. When Daniel gained consciousness, he remembered a man asked him to climb up the old tree trunk, and he pushed him to the hole. Joseph reassured him that it was a nightmare. That evening, Sarah told Joseph that she feels this place is unholy. I was going to lose both of my children, can't you see? And they are having nightmares. Joseph consoled Sarah. Hugging her, he said they were accidents that they were getting used to with the new place. Alvin came to visit Daniel when he returned home. I didn't mean for it to happen, said Alvin with remorse. Sarah hugged Alvin. It was an accident. You didn't do anything wrong. Daniel is my friend. We know Alvin, said Joseph kindly. Part 4. Sarah wondered how to cheer Daniel up. He looked sad, stuck inside with the shoulder-to-shoulder bandage to fix his collarbones. She decided to fix him a treat and wondered what else to do. You know how you two always read about old toys and things? Sarah asked Joseph while mixing a cake batter for Daniel. Dee, what about that? Joseph was drawing a design for his next job on the kitchen table using his pencils and sketch paper. Why don't you make one of those toys you two history buffs look at? It could be exciting for Dan to see it in real life. Sarah sounded pleased with the new idea. So was Joseph. Hey, that's a great idea actually. Well done. Joseph said it with a mock disbelief. Joseph was an artisan craftsman. He has been designing and making boats for many years. He knew he could copy a toy from the history book easily. Sarah put the cake in the oven. Where did my icing bags go? She wondered loudly and started opening the cabinets one after another. A sudden cry of horror made Joseph turn around in utter shock. Sarah was howling in horror. There was blood dripping down her forehead. She was staring at her right hand, blood oozing out of the deep cut. A CX was on the floor covered in blood. Sarah was continuously screaming and shaking. Dia ran to the kitchen to check what had happened. I have to take your mother to the hospital. Watch your brother. Joseph didn't have much time to explain or figure out what just happened. He wrapped Sarah's cut with the kitchen cloth and hauled her to the car. We'll be in the hospital soon. Just hold on. Joseph's voice shook a little. Part 5. Sarah had to have few stitches on her forehead and on her palm and arm. She was still shaking. That knife, it is so old. How did it get there? Sarah looked at Joseph with horror and whispered, I saw them like Dan did. The woman was stabbing me, but I think it was a child. Pushed the knife out of her hand and it fell. I think she wanted to kill me. Sarah paused to breath, whimpering, shivering. How did that knife get to my cupboard? The nurse standing by looked at Joseph with question marks. Joseph felt uncomfortable and a little alarmed for the first time. It's a very old house. The knife must have been there for ages. It took you by surprise, and you were just really terrified. We see things when we are scared. Joseph said it as if he was trying to comfort himself. Part 6. Joseph decided to clear the place up a little bit. Just an old house. It was an accident. I should have thought about this ahead and looked for all the little things. Who knows what else is hiding in the house? Joseph blamed himself. He decided to surprise Daniel with a toy like Sarah advised. Mother and son both were resting in their beds. Joseph asked Dia to keep an eye on them. Joseph worked hours and created the cutest spin-top toy, set following the 17th century designs. He could tell Daniel was really impressed. Alvin came to play with him like he did every afternoon. They both looked busy with the toys. Some things never go old, Joseph told Sarah in accomplishment. Sarah looked happy and smiled for the first time after returning from the hospital. That's that, then, thought Joseph. Let's stay safe from now. Part 7. That weekend, Joseph decided to spend the time in the workhouse. The outer house was converted into Joseph's crafts area where he will be building his boats. He started to concentrate on his work, but interrupted by Dia running in, screaming frantically, "Dad, Dan has gone crazy." She kept pointing at the house. Why? What happened? Dia couldn't say anything. She started to run back in the house. Joseph followed him. Joseph ran upstairs to Dan's room. Sarah was trying to stop a hysterical Dan. Socrates was angry. His tail was up, lashing. Daniel was frantically hitting himself with the spinning top, shouting, "These are not your toys." Sarah was trying to stop him from hitting himself. Daniel's face was red with marks and his lips were bleeding already. Joseph embraced Daniel, opened his fists with force, and took the spinning toys out of his grips and threw them on the floor. Socrates hissed at the direction of the spinning tops rolling on the floor. "It's okay, it's okay." Joseph kept rocking Daniel. Dia and Sarah were sobbing, not knowing what was happening. "I felt someone told me to tell you to make those toys, like a man told me you should make them for his children." Sarah was sniveling. Later in the afternoon, when Daniel calmed down, Alvin was keeping him busy, and Dia was watching them. Sarah was adamant. "I don't care if we lose money. I want to leave this house. I feel something like something is really wrong in this house. I want to go back to London." Joseph knew it was the final decision. Part 8. Daniel and Alvin had a sad goodbye. They were good friends. Alvin, "I'll see you again." Sarah, "Maybe, sweetheart." Joseph, "Who knows?" They regretted not meeting his parents. Part 9. 2020. 32 years old, Daniel decided to stay with his parents in the lockdown. Oh, Daniel felt like a little kid again, doing things with Dad. They decided to tidy up the storage because Sarah told them to. They started coming across things as they were opening all the big and little boxes. "Dad, look." Daniel showed an envelope labeled "Negatives from the Manor House." "They must be the old photos I never developed. Your mom didn't want anything to do with that house. I must have put them away." Joseph took digital photos these days, so he took them to a developing studio. They did some research on the old house at the library and printed out an article on the manor house. Daniel and Joseph started looking at the photos and the article when they returned back to the garage. "Hey, look, I am playing in the backyard with Socrates. I miss that cat. He was always so angry in that house." Daniel remembered. "Yeah, you used to play with that little boy. What was his name again?" Alvin remembered Daniel. "He kept telling me I don't want you to leave." Daniel remembered. He was a humble boy. Joseph was concentrating on the article. Well, Lord Calder and Luella had died with their child in scarlet fever. They were quarantined in the manor house in their last days. "How sad," said Joseph. Joseph started concentrating on the photograph of the graves when suddenly his eyes followed Daniel's icy gaze. They were both frozen, looking at a photo Daniel was holding. They then started flipping through the photographs frenziedly. Socrates looked struggling in the photographs, as if he was trying to free himself. He managed to look straight at the camera in one photo when being held. It was as if he was trying to tell something to Joseph, except that it looked like he was sitting in the air. Or he was struggling with an invisible force. He was held above from the ground, as if floating. "Dad!" Daniel shrieked under his breath. What does it say on the child's grave? Joseph picked up the photograph with the third headstone and examined closely. He read out the epitaph. Alvin James Hat, 1693 to 1700. You are now as once was I. You will travel far as I say goodbye. Prepare to take a forever vow. Then you will be what I am now. Honestly, Detective Basque, this is why our ancestors changed their name. Nicholas said, we didn't want the rumors from Hungary to follow us here. Detective Basque pulled out his notebook and prepared to write. Really, Mr. Nadasti, he said. What rumors would those be? Outrage made the family patriarch clench his hands against the armrests of his chair. Sir, I assure you we are fine American citizens. Nicholas shouted. My great-great-great-grandfather, Frederick Nadasti, fought in your Civil War. Our family has been making glorious contributions since our arrival on these shores in 1850. Those must matter more than anything. Those must matter more than anything. The seasoned investigator was not satisfied with this answer, but knew pressing the issue would not further his objective. I'm sure they have, Mr. Nadasti, Basque said. But the victim, Leslie Peterson, was invited to the masquerade party at your house. She didn't come home that night, or the next. Leslie's parents are very worried. You're a parent, surely you empathize with them. Nicholas relaxed, calculating how to best assuage the detective. Yes, I have my 3 children, he said. I would be inconsolable if anyone harmed them. I will tell you what I know. While Nicholas's son Gregory was having his 18th birthday party, Gregory was in love with the idea of old meets new. So his mother, Ariana, had decided to have a masquerade with the best DJ in Philadelphia. Make sure you emphasize the dress code, Mom, Gregory said. I want everyone in semi-formal dress and masks are mandatory. His mother was always indulging her only son's whim. Yes, my boy, she said. I promise you'll have the best coming-of-age celebration. Ariana wiped a tear from her eye. She felt it had only been yesterday. Gregory had been her little baby. Tonight, he would become a man. By the time Leslie had arrived, the music, smoke machine, and lights were going full blast in the Nadasti family mansion. A woman who was tall and intimidating stood at the front door. Your name? She asked the new arrival. Leslie Peterson, the girl said from behind her ornate mask. Leslie always liked to make an entrance. She had worn her pearl-colored prom dress from last year, her face concealed behind a porcelain shell with gold leaf floral patterns around the eyes and mouth. Leslie loved being ostentatious. The woman had finished scanning her list. I found your name, Miss Peterson, she said. Go on in. The ballroom is the first door on the left of the atrium. Leslie thanked the lady and went inside. Gregory had been talking with his sister, Elizabeth, by the refreshment table. So, brother mine, she said, are you enjoying your big night? Gregory lifted his dragon head mask to take a sip of spackling cider. I suppose, he answered. I was hoping to find a suitable young lady, like father asked me to. Elizabeth playfully jabbed her brother with the swan mask that she held on the end of a stick. I see you have your priorities straight, she said. Don't worry. I'm sure your instinct will guide you. He had been about to snap at Elizabeth when he spotted Leslie. Something long dormant stirred in Gregory's veins. He could smell Leslie's sweet scent wafting across the room. Even the fake fog couldn't conceal it. I believe you're right, dear sister, he said. Excuse me. Me. Leslie had been taking in the party scene. She had hoped to see someone she recognized. Perhaps that was foolish considering everyone was in disguise. Why, hello, a strong, familiar voice said. She turned to see a tall, sophisticated young man approaching her. He was hot-looking, clad in black with a dragon's face hiding his own. "Is that you, Greg?" she asked. "Nice dragon outfit." He hadn't expected to be recognized. "Yes," he said. "How do you know me?" She laughed a little. "It's me, Leslie," she said. "We're in AP chemistry together." That seemed to refresh Gregory's memory. "Oh yeah," he said, "I know you. You're Mr. Riley's favorite student, and also the most attractive girl I know." Leslie flushed at the compliment. "Well, I wouldn't say I'm that pretty," she said. Gregory, taking a leaf from his father's book, lifted her hand and kissed it gently. "Well, I disagree," he said. "I find you irresistible. May I invite you to our private sitting room? We can be more private there." Gregory's natural charm was impossible to say no to. "Sure," Leslie said. "You don't bite, do you?" She giggled mischievously, and Gregory joined in her joke. He took her by the hand and led her out of the crowded ballroom. "My son sent me a picture," Nicholas said. "I believe they call these selfies, don't they?" Nicholas handed Detective Basque his cell phone. Basque looked at the screen. It showed Gregory and Leslie sitting on a white antique love seat. Both had their masks off and were smiling at the camera. Nothing to suggest Leslie felt unsafe. "It looks like they enjoyed themselves," Basque said. "Any idea what happened after that?" Nicholas put his phone back in his pocket and pretended to think. "I'm not certain," he said. "I believe Gregory spent the rest of the night with her. Detective, we were about to eat supper. Why don't you join us? Ariana always makes more than enough food." The investigator's stomach betrayed him. Basque hadn't had time to eat lunch. There'd been too much paperwork. "Would it be all right if I talk to the rest of your family while we enjoy our meal?" he asked. Nicholas rose from his chair. "Of course," he said. "I understand how important it is to reach the truth quickly. Let me inform my wife you'll be here for dinner." Except all the Nadastis were rather pale. The dining room looked like a Norman Rockwell painting. Nicholas sat at the head of the table. Gregory and Elizabeth sat next to an empty chair reserved for their mother. Across from Elizabeth was a girl of about 5, with black pigtails and a lacy red dress. "Who is this little darling?" Detective Basque asked. The little girl looked up. "I'm Letty," she said. "Papa's teaching me about the Countess. Did you know? Ow! Elizabeth! That hurt!" Her elder sister laughed. "Oh, Letty," she said. "You're just confused. Dad's not teaching you about any royalty. He's teaching you accounting right." Letty was still rubbing her shin as she answered. "Right," she said. "Now I remember. So that's why he kept talking about dividends." Basque knew that something was off. Little girls didn't usually learn such complex mathematics. Ariana swept into the room with a large, well-prepared roasted chicken. "Here's the main course," she said. "Detective, my wonderful husband has told me you are to sit over by Letty. We are honored to have a real Keystone Cop for supper." Basque took the indicated seat gratefully. "Honestly, ma'am, I would rather think of myself as a servant of the Kitsons of Philadelphia," he said. "I'm glad to join you." After placing the chicken in the center of the table, Ariana brought out a bottle of red wine and poured some for herself and Nicholas. Basque covered the mouth of his goblet. "I'm sorry," he said. "I can't drink on duty." Ariana smiled sweetly. "Perhaps you can drink juice?" she asked. "Or perhaps some water?" Basque nodded in affirmation. "Juice sounds nice," he said. "Thank you." The woman of the house returned with a bottle of cherry pomegranate juice and poured it in 4 of the goblets. Once they were all seated, The family began dividing up the food. "Gregory," Basque said, "your dad told me about your birthday party. He said you met a pretty girl there. What was her name again?" Gregory had been taught manners and swallowed his food before swallowing. "Her name was Leslie," he said. "I think we really hit it off." Basque cut a piece of chicken down to size and chewed it thoughtfully. The meat was saltier than he was used to. Basque took a sip from his goblet. "Do you know?" Basque trailed off. He was beginning to feel like his head was revolving like a ballerina in a dance solo. Nicholas eyed his guest. "Are you sure you're feeling well, Detective?" he asked. "I hope you are not overly tired." Basque's face was beginning to tingle and black spots spread over his vision. "Mr. Nadasti." Detective Basque lost consciousness as he slumped to the floor. A ringing sounded in Basque's ears. He knew his body wouldn't hurt so much if he were dead. Trying to sit up, Basque found that he was bound to some sort of stone table. "I was hoping you would stay asleep, Detective," Nicholas said. "I guess Ariana miscalculated the dose. So they had drugged Basque on purpose." "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "You were dangerously close," Gregory said. "If you had kept up with your questions, our true nature would have been exposed. We couldn't have that." This was getting weird. Why hadn't the Nadastas tried to buy his silence? That was the normal rich person response. "I promise you I won't bring any unwanted attention to your family," Basque said. "There's no reason to kidnap me." Nicholas and Gregory loomed over him. "Oh, but there is," he said. "That night with Leslie was so passionate. I'm afraid I lost control and my instincts took over. Maybe there was a chance of reasoning with him." "So you what?" Basque probed. "Did you rape Leslie? Maybe you killed her? If it was an accident?" "Her blood was like heaven," Gregory shouted. "I couldn't stop drinking. I wanted her to join our covenants." The boy was seriously freaking Basque out. "What are you talking about?" he asked. Nicholas placed a comforting hand on Gregory's shoulder. His son was sobbing. "I suppose it won't hurt to tell you now," Nicholas said. "We are descendants of Paul Nadasti, the son of Elizabeth Bathory. Like him, we share in our ancestress' legacy, the infamous Countess of Hungary. It was all coming together. We are the last of her faith," Nicholas said. "Through her, we are blessed and cursed. We have covenanted to serve the ancestors' gods, and they bless us with extremely long lives. But that blessing comes with a price. We must feed off human blood once in a while. Also, our kind cannot reproduce with those not of the covenant." So it was Gregory's turn to take a mate. He was supposed to convert her, but I suppose my son has trouble. Basque was breaking out in goosebumps. This was so not what he'd been expecting. Why couldn't these people have been ordinary suspects? Did they have to be supernatural fiends? "We'll try to be gentle," Nicholas promised. "We just can't let you live. Now that you know our secret, it's not personal, honestly." Both men had sprouted fangs and their eyes glowed red. Basque only screamed for a second as their teeth tore into the arteries in his neck. In less than a minute, the detective was dead. Evelyn woke up suddenly and turned on her bed. She didn't know what woke her up. She tried to move her legs, but an aching discomfort on her feet stopped her. She then tried to sit up, but her back gnawed. That was strange, she thought. She tried to recollect what happened the previous night, but her mind felt vacuous. Her whole body hurt badly. She turned around to face the other side of her bed and saw her blue dress on the bed. Then the memory of the previous night dashed into her mind. She had attended a birthday party with her boyfriend, John Dodd. It was John's friend, Andy, who was hosting the party, and he had invited John and some of his other friends to his house that evening for the party. A little boisterous and savage young lad. He was one of Evelyn's phobia of a hangout because he always looks for turbulence in calm waters. Even though Evelyn had detested his style, he always had a way of persuading Evelyn to do things against her wish. He was the only of John's friend who Evelyn knew was still uncommitted and unattached. He was a party animal, always wanting to hang out with ladies, sleep with them without any attachment. He was also goofy and irresponsible. He always had this precept that life was meant to be lived, and not the other way round, and that people had their own choice at live life, however, that wanted. Evelyn simply defined Andy's epigram as the most languorous and slothful excuse of a purposeless individual. Evelyn couldn't talk John out of not attending the party, and she couldn't find any other justification of skipping it herself. She decided to tag along. Andy had always been a wet blanket for Evelyn, and she couldn't think why this one night could be any different or even worse. She just braced herself to whatever was coming her way that night, and be strong. Maybe her confidence would die out all Andy's idea of pulling her down tonight. How she wished she knew how wrong she was. John smiled at her throughout. He was always close by her, holding her hand as he always did and whispering. He made Evelyn look so special, and Evelyn couldn't stop loving him. They kissed most of the night and swapped sexy glances while Andy kept regarding them. You know what Geisendy had said at last. Why don't we switch dancing partners? Before Evelyn could object, the rest of the group had concurred to Andy's idea. By then, Evelyn had become a bit tipsy. Before she knew it, Andy had captured her hand and pulled her away from John. Relax, you're with me now. And before Evelyn could think of a reply, he swung her around and holding her waist so tight, swayed her to the beat of the music. She wanted to say something, but Andy pulled her closer to himself and then swung her again. This time she tottered and almost fell, but Andy caught her. He found it so amusing that he began to laugh. Loosen up, Evelyn. You can't even perform a simple dance step. Evelyn tried to glance over her shoulder and make out John, but Andy was good at what he does. He held her again and jiggled her lightly to the rhythm of the music. Relax, Evelyn. It's just a dance. It's not like I want to loot you from John. Evelyn abhorred it when Andy tried to downplay his ill manner towards her. As her head was still swiveling, she said, "All right, Andy. I'm okay now." Andy frowned. "We haven't even started, and it's my birthday, remember? I know you don't like me, but at least do me this favor, please." Evelyn agreed, and they danced a little before Andy pulled his final stunt, which propelled Evelyn to throw up. It was messy, but immense. It reposed on the convenient guests as they stopped dancing to clean themselves up. Everyone that saw her stopped dancing. Andy vanished, and the awkwardness was too much for Evelyn. She went to the restroom, cursing Andy under her breath just as the music stopped. As she tried to sit up, she remembered John, his face full of embarrassment, as he tried to pacify Evelyn. But Evelyn had had enough. She wanted to go home. She remembered feeling lightheaded and then blacking out. As she tried to raise her leg again with much endeavor, she started discerning fumes and smog filling the air in her room. She tried to say something, but she was too frail to speak. The potency of the smoke was increasing and filling her lungs, but she was helpless, just like an infant yet to walk, watching as an alien trounced it. She blinked several times and tried to focus. She looked down towards her legs, they were physically all right. She tried to clear her throat, but it made her predicament worse. Just then, she heard a voice. It was distinct, but it flickered her dying hope. It stopped, and Evelyn anticipated that she was hallucinating. Minutes passed by, nothing. By then, Evelyn's room was almost covered with smoke. She shifted and tried another futile attempt to sit up. This time, it sent a massive spasm down her system that left her whining in agony. She tried to figure out what to do next. She heard the voice the second time, and she listened intently. It began to sound closer. It was a man's voice, and Evelyn tried to respond but couldn't. She wished whoever the person was would find her before this smoke shook her to death. Her eyes blinked rapidly several times as she looked determined towards her door at the sight of her rescuer. Then she began to hear footsteps. They were coming towards her room. Her heart was pounding heavily as she prayed silently. "Honey," he heard this time and realized it was John. John appeared in the doorway and walked swiftly to her. "There's a fire," he said breathlessly. What happened?" Getting no response, he lifted her from the bed and carried her through the corridor. The smoke had covered the whole place and made it arduous for them to see their way through. John groped around for the way. As he carried her past the corridor, Evelyn took a sharp look into her kitchen and saw the fiery fire setting the whole place ablaze. "Oh," she muttered. "After I left last night, I decided to check up on you this morning and saw the whole place ablaze. What happened?" John asked, as he carried her out of the house. "There is something beautiful about the fire. Frightening. It's frightening. I must remind the voice in my head. The fire is beautiful, burning red and orange and so warm, but it is also frightening. It's frightening because it is dangerous. Because it is dangerous for him. My Rochester is strong and tall and brave, but the fire will burn him alive. It will burn him until his bones are ash and his blood is smoke, and I can't have that. I look at the fire, and it frightens me, but he can't be burned. I cannot let him burn. Smoke fills my lungs as I enter the hall. Warm, so very warm. The walls burn, and the house creaks, and the fire laughs. What a haunting sight. What a horror that befell this house. That is what people will say if we burn up here. A tragedy, it will be called. There has been too much tragedy within these walls already. He has faced too much tragedy. My Rochester, whose fate has been marked by an unlucky star. To think that this happened to him along with everything else, his home, his livelihood going up in smoke. He won't join it. I won't let him. This will not be a tragedy. Not another one. There has been too much tragedy in both our lives. Too much loneliness. I think of the first time I recognized that loneliness in his eyes, the same sort that I met each time I looked in the mirror. There are few in this world who can find value in such pain. I found mine in his eyes. We matched two missing pieces that could fit nowhere else in this world. My loneliness meant something because it made me perfect for him. The thing that could save him from these dark and dreary halls that now threatened to collapse and burn him whole. I know this house as well as I know my own mind. The halls are long and dusty, the rooms large and empty. He never opens the windows, I think. He doesn't like the sunlight anymore, but people can change. They can learn to love what they never saw value in before. I know that they can. Sprinting down the halls, I shout for my Rochester to answer, so that I can know that he is safe. He will be in his study, because that is where he always goes to get away. That gloomy little study with the heavy lock on the door. He used to never let me sit with him inside. Slowly, ever so slowly, that changed. The room I was once forbidden has become my favorite haunt. It is still gloomy, even when I leave him flowers by the latched window, even when I spray my perfume on the cushions of the couch. Without sunlight, I don't think it will ever brighten up. But my Rochester keeps everything under lock and key, and he is slow to change. The glass in the windows crack as the house boils. The locks cannot keep the sunlight out now, not when the glass has shattered. That glass grinds into the heels of my boots as I run. It cracks and grinds against stone floors, and it joins the cacophony of the laughing fire as I sprint through the smoke towards where I know my Rochester to be. I'm getting close, or I think I am, but everything is so much less clear with the smoke. So much smoke. More smoke than I imagined. But I can hear movement that isn't a result of the flames, and that smoke clears. A cough, a shout, a gasp of pain. My beating heart nearly stops. I cannot be too late. Even if he is in pain, he is still alive. Covering my nose and mouth with the neck of my shirt to keep the smoke from my lungs, I break into a determined sprint towards the sound, towards the study. The door is already open, my Rochester, leaning against the wood, crouched towards the ground. Falling to my knees beside him, I try to get him to stand. Initially, he meets me with resistance, but then he looks into my eyes and is quelled. This was always our way. The push and the pull, but in the end all we had was each other. As I bring one of his arms to hold over my shoulder, I notice the burn on the hand. Round, the imprint of his family's crest, a brand given when he opened the door to the study in his attempt to get away. Under the heat of the fire, the metal burned too hot. He had underestimated how much this house wanted to hurt him. I would soothe the wound once we made it out of the flames. I swore I would. I'd wrap the brand in linens, I'd clean it with alcohol and tinctures. I would be kinder and softer than this house ever was. I would not punish him for his devotion to me like this place always did. I would not drown him in shadows and lock my doors to keep him trapped. I would not weigh him down with vines and ivy and old rotting bricks. When this house burns, we will not burn with it. I help my Rochester stand, and we begin to stumble forward the way I came. The fire has grown hotter, the smoke almost debilitating. I can feel my Rochester swaying against me. His weight is nearly too heavy for me to carry. The burnt hand hangs near my chin as I drag us through the house, and I begin to worry. Will he notice that while his hands smell like melted flesh and smoke, mine smell like kerosene? There is something pulling at the back of my head. A thought, a memory. I can't be sure. Maybe it is the recollection of the first time we met. When I first came to this home looking for work, and that fire crackled in the stone hearth in his study, and the night felt so calm. Our beginning, though neither of us could have known at the time. Or maybe it was the kerosene. The redded curtains in my childhood home on fire as I stood in the street and watched. That night was cold. Was this the memory pulling at the back of my head? That horrible night when there had been no sunlight, no warmth, no arm slung over my shoulder, or a second heartbeat that told me to keep moving forward. I heard my Rochester cough, and I shook the stupor from my brow and kept forward. Down the hall, down the winding staircase, flames licked our feet, but I did not let them stop us. I did not stand still to admire their red dancing lights, nor did I listen to their laughter as I passed. And the door to the home that was always bolted shut was now hanging open and wide as I had left it. The broken hinge creaked as we stumbled out and into the open air. The smoke cleared. My Rochester gasped as he stumbled to the ground, landing on his hands and knees. I wrapped my arms around him to drag him further away. The house could collapse, the wooden beams could fall, the foundation crack and swallow us whole. This home was still dangerous. The fire, I corrected myself, the fire was still dangerous. But as we got further away to the far end of the property, I set my Rochester's weary body down beside me and turned back to look at the flames. It was different seeing it from this distance. The old Victorian home was alight with a red glow. The flames lunged from the broken windows, calling to me, waving us goodbye. The billow of smoke from the roof was black, as if purging the house from the dark spirits that once haunted these halls, cleansing it from the inside out. All the massive doors that kept him locked away, all the dark corridors that once haunted him, were gone. There is nothing frightening about this at all. The fire is beautiful because it is mine, and he will be too, my Rochester. Chapter 1. Once upon a time there were 5 siblings called Mary, Lily, Rosie, Rohan, and Chris Deutsch. They always liked to play in the park, but all of this changed when they grew up. They got bored of the park and wanted to do something adventurous, mystery type, and even scary, but the small kids, Lily and Rosie, liked the park and were not interested to join with their siblings. While they were discussing, Rohan got an idea to explore the old house, mostly called as the haunted house in the ancient time. Everyone liked the idea, except Lily and Rosie, as actually Lily is scared of anything and almost everything. But Rosie, even though she was a brave girl, she was scared as her aunt told her a secret about the haunted house. Later, when they were going to the haunted house, they did not even inform the parents because they were so interested into it. Lily and Rosie had to join their sisters and brothers without any choice, as they don't know the way back home. If they say anything to their sibling, they will not listen. Rosie tried to warn them, but they just ignored her. The other children in the park noticed their conversation. Later, the siblings reached the old house. The 3 children, without any fear, knocked the house door that was creaking. The windows were damaged. Suddenly, the door opened by itself. When they entered in the house, some pictures were looking at them. And in a flash of second, a hand came and got Mary, and went inside a room that was in the ground floor. But Mary's screaming voice was coming from the first floor. The door in the ground floor was open. Rohan ran to that door, but it got shut. No one was brave to go to the first floor. After a while, Rosie and Lily fainted in fear. Chris and Rohan started to cry. Then Rohan's glasses fell down so he was not able to see properly, but he was able to see Mary clearly. Chris was not able to see Mary, but heard Rohan saying that he can see Mary right in front. Just then a gust of wind pulled both Chris and Rohan to the second floor. Still, Rosie and Mary were fainted. It became afternoon. It was the normal time when the kids will return home, but today they did not come back home. The kids' parents and their aunt got worried and went to the park in search of them. No child was there in the park except one. The child told that they went to the old house. I was waiting for you, as I knew that you will come in search of them. The mother, the father, and aunt turned around and started searching the kids around the park, but no, they're not there. Maybe the kid was right. They turned back. The kid was with her mother going home. Chapter 2. Then they went to the haunted house and saw the big door. They opened it, and when they went inside the hall and the door got shut, they saw Rosie and Lily lying down. Lily and Rosie, they both woke up and started crying and said, Rohan, Chris and Mary got caught by a ghost. A strange creaking sound was heard behind the opening door. Later, when it was fully open, it made Mary's sound. And when the father went inside the door, he could not see anything except dark and Mary's head. Suddenly something shut the door and pulled Mary's father inside. The floor was full of blood. The mother died, as she could not see anyone die. Now only the aunt, Lily, and Rosie were left. The big door again opened and they ran outside. They went back sad in fear. When they entered their house, this stairs was full of blood, and then when they went upstairs, they saw Rohan dead on the bed. Everyone started to scream. Then they saw a gust of wind appear in front of them, and the aunt saw her grandmother, who was already dead. The aunt did not got scared, as it actually normal for her. She asked her grandma that, "Why are you doing this? You are a very kind person." The grandma said that you three have 7 more days to live that start from today night. And within these days, you have to find the reason why I am doing this. And if you solve my problem, I will make everything back to normal. Everyone chose the first option, and her grandmother left. Chapter 3. When the grandmother left, they were in the 1860 of the same house. This is where my grandmother lived when she was you and your mom's. Grandmother lived in the haunted house, said the aunt to the 2 kids. Then the kids and the aunt were able to see their great-grandmother and the aunt's grandmother in their house when they were kids, and the aunt lives now in the present. They were talking and having a fight about their golden ring, which was actually meant for the aunt's grandmother, but she shared it to the kids' great-grandmother. After that, the kids' great-grandmother said that if I live with you, you will kill me, and moved to the haunted house. The aunt's grandmother was so sad, and then the aunt, Rosie, and Lily noticed that the aunt's grandmother heard them, but cannot see them. She did not know whose voices were that. And then the aunt said to her grandma that we are the sisters of the ring. You have to say me what is going on. Then the grandma said that the ring was a magical sword. Younger sister was born. We grew together and I loved her like anything. I even shared the ring to her. One night when I was sleeping, I got a dream out the ring. My great-grandmother said that if you are blessed with this magic source, make sure that you use it. And if you want, you can share, but it should be shared equally. The other hand, who is not the keeper of the ring, should not have the ring for herself. If it happens, darkness will approach both you and the wrong hand user, but the keeper will also have goodness in it, and it should be broken once taken from the wrong hand. Now my sister has it. The aunt said, "Do not worry, we will take care of it." After a while, when the aunt Rosie and Lily were going to the old house, the kids asked that, "Why did you say that we were the sisters of the ring?" The aunt said that, "My grandmother said if any cases use the word sister of the ring, then all 3 went took the ring and broke it." That was a separate tough journey to take the ring and break it. Readers will say about it in the next book. When they broke the ring, they fainted and woke up in their bed. It was a dream, but only the 3 know the truth. And there was no haunted house anymore. It was a normal house. The 7th day was over again. The aunt's grandmother came and told 3 sentences. "Thank you, sorry, and this will be the last time you are going to see me." The 3 said bye, and the grandmother left. They again lived happily ever after. The end. "Please don't make me go," pleaded Sam. It was October 18th. The cool autumn breeze had created a chilly vibe across the town of Cleveland, Ohio. Today was the day of the great hot dog eating contest. Everybody in the town had to go. It was a city tradition. Sam had hated going ever since the terrible event, but he wouldn't rather talk about that right now. "You have 3 seconds to get into the car," screamed Sam's mom, Sarah. 1. Sam wasn't going to go, even if his mom was going to pull out the 1, 2, 3 card. 2. Well, maybe Sam should go. He didn't want his mom to yell at him, and he was a very responsible kid. 3. Sam ran into the car and buckled his seatbelt faster than an adult cheetah, blazing down the safari on a cool day. How did I get here? Sam had exclaimed a few minutes into the car ride. His mom had gotten the better of him with her strategy. "You are one funny kid," James said. "Oh my gosh, you are so annoying, Dad," exclaimed Sam. Hey, settle down. It's not like you were going to die there." Sam looked up in suspicion. This was an odd thing to say. "Never mind," said James. It is not like you would understand. Sam felt very tired because he had stayed up too late last night. He was going to try to stay awake as much as possible throughout the day. Are we there yet? Sam had said groggily after 20 minutes of driving. Yes, we are here, said James. Everyone got out of the car. Sam's mom had brought her Polaroid camera to take pictures of people eating hot dogs. Sam thought that this was disgusting and hated that his mom would actually do this, who would want to have a printed photo of some weirdo stuffing his mouth with disgusting hot dogs. Sam and his family went over to the canopies set up all around the fielded area. The first canopy they went to had the smell of rotten eggs and spoiled milk. Sam shouldered at the thought of what those canopy workers used for hygiene. Somehow, he survived the whole canopy experience. Sam just wanted to go home. He didn't want her to show up again and ruin his life. It was not a good time for Sam. The time had come. It was time to watch the hot dog eating contest. Sam forced himself to stay and to watch all these disgusting people stuff their faces with whatever is in a hot dog. Sam hated it all the way. Hours upon hours had passed before the end of the hot dog contest, where the mayor of Cleveland stuffs his face with those yummy and delicious hot dogs. Sam couldn't wait to leave. All his stress and anxiety will be gone from not having to deal with her. He tugged on his dad's shirt to go when the contest had ended. Come on, Dad. It is time to go. James didn't budge. Son, we have to stay, James had said solemnly. Wait. What? Look, I promise it will be okay. Just please stay with us, no matter what happens. Oh, okay. Sam had gotten very confused. Too many out-of-this-world things have happened today. He decided to listen to his parents. It was the right thing to do, at least he thought. He followed his parents into a strange alleyway. None of them could see in the darkness, so Sam's parents got a flashlight out of their pocket. They did it so smoothly, like they knew this was going to happen. Suddenly, a dark, sinister voice rose from the shadows saying, "Do you have what I asked of you?" Yes, we do. If you come out, we will give it to you," said James. Good, said the voice. The dark figure came out of the shadows. Sam let out a scream after seeing her, his most feared nemesis. This was getting serious. "So, where is it?" exclaimed the woman rudely. "Right here, ma'am," said James. He handed the woman a bag. It was hard to tell what was inside it. James did not want to die. Not today, at least. "Okay, everyone explain to me what is happening right now," exclaimed Sam. "Would you just shush it?" Sarah abruptly said, "You could get all three of us killed." Sam had opened his mouth to speak again, but then he saw her with a gun held up high. All the memories of that day of sorrow came back. Sam couldn't handle it. He decided to hold it in. He was a smart kid after all. "It seems you forgot about me so soon. You're lucky I didn't kill you, boy. One pull of this trigger and you will be done for," said the woman. Sarah interrupted. "May we go now? You got what you wanted." The woman checked her bag. "Yes, you may go now. Make sure no one sees you on your way out of here." The family of three started to scramble away. "Wait!" The woman had said that so loud she practically screamed. "What is this?" "It is what you wanted, ma'am," James said, trying to hide the sweat popping out of his head. He knew that this definitely was not the thing she had wanted. He could remember the day that he was roped into this nonsense. It happened to be the day Sam had the same encounter with the woman. She had been a teenager then, an insane drunk trying to ruin everybody's lives. Sam had been a victim of hers for a while. Then came the day of the hot dog contest. Sam actually really liked this fun festival before the incident. He and Sarah were aware about this woman. Before, everyone hated her. The police were still trying to find her. They didn't care about this, though. They went to the hot dog contest. Halfway through the contest, James had looked down to find that little 7-year-old Sam was not next to him like he usually was. He told Sarah that Sam was missing. They had both went looking to find him. They had asked everyone if they had seen a cute boy with brown hair and blue eyes that looked so beautiful you would just stare into them for hours and all your cares would fly away. None of them said yes. They were starting to get very worried. Then, like as if an angel had answered their prayers, they heard crying. "Mommy, Daddy," cried a kid's voice. They both followed the voice to its source, a dark alley where no one would see. He had not expected their child to be in there. He would have thought little Sam would want to stay into the light. They walked into the darkness. It was to their horror they saw their child being held hostage by none other than the woman. Sarah gasped. "What have you done with our child?" James screamed. "Oh, hello. You must be the boy's parents," the teen said. "Yeah, we are." "Give our son back, you creep," James shouted. He had suddenly regretted what he had said after the psycho took out a gun and aimed it straight at him. "Ah, be careful what you say, old man. Wouldn't want to murder you. Give us our son, please," Sarah begged. "Maybe. Hey, do you two want to play a game?" Those petrified parents, they were too afraid to say no. "Okay. I want you all to remember me and give me this specific thing in 6 years tops," said the woman. "If you promise to do it, then you can have your son back." "Ugh, what if we don't?" Sarah said. "Your son will never see the light of day again," the crazed woman exclaimed. The woman held out her gun and aimed it close to the crying boy. "In 6 years, your son may die." "What do you want?" asked Sarah. "Oh, nothing much. Just the key to the police station," answered the woman. "We can't do that," James exclaimed. "Watch what you say, old man," the woman said once again as she held the gun up to little Sam's head. "We'll do it," exclaimed Sarah. She hadn't known she said those words until a few moments later. "We will get you what you want." "You bet that right," exclaimed the woman. "If you don't, we know. Please don't tell us again," said Sarah. The woman gave them little Sam back, and as soon as they were out of the lunatic's sight, they all ran to the nearest police officer. "Officer! Officer!" Sarah exclaimed. "What is it, ma'am?" asked the officer. "Drunk girl," said Sarah. "What?" asked the officer. "There was a girl. You may have heard of her. Well, she held my son hostage and wouldn't let him go until we promised to steal the key for the police station," James said, mostly out of breath. "Of course we didn't side with her, though." "Where is the girl?" asked the officer. "Over in that dark alleyway." "Well then, follow me," said the officer. We all ran to the alley where we found little Sam, but when we got there, all we saw was that dark, eerie shadow covering up most of the alley. The officer got out a flashlight and looked around. "You sure she was in here?" he asked. "Oh yes, for sure," Sarah said. The officer looked around once more. Nothing. "Well, I will keep in touch with you all and let you know if I find the girl." "Thank you, sir," Sarah said. "No problem," said the officer. Those were the last words they heard him say. There was never a call back from him. To this day, no one knows where he is or what happened to him. "This is not what I had asked you for," the woman screamed. Sam had no idea what was going on. He wanted to curl up in a ball and hide. He didn't know what was going to happen to him. He didn't want to know. Yes, it is. It is the key to the police station, exclaimed James. It is a card? Screamed the woman. That is the key. Everything got upgraded since the 20th century. Keys are now cards, Sarah exclaimed. Okay, I will try it, said the woman. James had regretted going here. He knew that they shouldn't have come. He hadn't seen the woman on the news in 4 years, so he had thought it would be safe. So they went to the contest. They had also created a fake card to attempt to save their son. After the contest, he had went to the alley just to make sure they were in the clear. To their luck, the woman was unfortunately there. Now he and his family had to attempt to lie to a supervillain. Sam didn't know what was happening, which made matters worse. James had to follow the woman. He decided that he was going to make a break for it while walking to the police station. Halfway to the police station, James had whispered to his family, "We are going to make a run for it in 3. You know, if you are not telling the truth, I can take your son's life," said the woman. 2. But you seem like a trustworthy family. Wouldn't want to kill your only son. 1. Well, we are here. Hey, where are you going? Run, 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 screamed James. Adrenaline rushed through Sam's veins. He ran as fast as he could carry himself. If he could just make it to the end of the brick path and around the building, he would be just fine. He just had to run. Run! 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 Roo! Boom! Darkness fills Sam's eyes. The pain he had been feeling while he was running has now spread everywhere, and he fell down. Sam! His mother and father exclaimed. Relax, a voice told Sam. It will be okay. Sam suddenly started to float. He knew he had died. He saw his parents get shot as well, followed by screams. It was surprising to see that their spirits didn't raise up like his did. Sam knew that they would never go down below. He must think, where are his parents? Then, a thought struck him like no other thought would. His parents could have been angels. Family by choice braves the blood of the veins. It's what I told her upon witnessing the markings on her wrist under the watch, the results of her mother's ligature, and the scars that her artistic father painted on her back. A choice goes much farther, I elaborated. It's all right for her to choose us, because we chose her. Morning. Oh, whoa. Grabbing my breakfast from the counter, I sat across her at the dining table. I wasted no time in devouring it like a starved whale, but her toast and eggs displayed no signs of consumption. She preferred to wait for her food to cool. Me too. I didn't want her burning her tongue. She yawned, her slender fingers clasping over the small opening. New polish. Slept well last night? I asked. My parents and I spent significant effort in constructing an environment where she could embrace the feeling of familial love. Perhaps it was superfluous for a first-year university student whose transfer to this part of town would last for a mere semester, but we wanted to instill an unwillingness to leave in her. Not really, she answered with yet another yawn. This one much more powerful. Dang way. Think you could remove that weird statue head in my room for me? I forced a chuckle to bulldoze the disappointment that was seeping in. That head was my favorite item. Feels like I'm being watched. It's honestly disturbing, she shuddered and blew on the first slice of French toast. I'd remove it myself. She bit off a piece gracefully, as if not wanting to hurt the bread. But I can't reach that part of the bookshelf. I'd placed it on the highest level because it gave me the best view of her sleeping and tossing around, especially when she'd accidentally tug on the hem of her nightdress to reveal her milky skin lying underneath. Occasionally she'd sleep unclothed, and those were the best nights since. Hey, her voice cut through sharply. I blinked. Yeah? Sorry? Yeah, I'll take it down for you when we return. Much appreciated. I'd lose one set of eyes in her room, but I had several more. Your parents at the workshop again? I stuffed an egg into my mouth to avoid replying. She's at it again. Her curiosity for my parents' work was infinite, and their lack of presence at home and abundance of it in the metal workshop next door only added to this unpleasant but thrilling feeling. The neighbors labeled Mom and Dad as workaholics, but I knew better. Most of the time they entertained each other with their hobby. In the basement, where I joined them intermittently when I wasn't with her. You really ought to show me their creations one day, she chimed. We could let her in, of course. No harm in that. However, a few looks around, and she'd quickly deduced that it was too much time, too few results. She was quick-witted like that. A week after moving, and she asked us why we always skipped dinner. It was to maintain healthy diets. 3 weeks and she questioned the delectability of our Friday beef recipes. Mom had to disclose my secret instructions. A month in, and she probed into my sexuality. 2. And you get the point. I successfully rerouted her attention to last week's homework assignment until it was time to head to lectures. The ride there wasn't peaceful. At least, not for her. The potholes sent a migraine crashing in, and I was constantly apologizing for the poor maintenance of our roads. Useless government. Although what I should have apologized for is deliberately driving over them. I fancied the way she closed her eyes and winced at the sharp pangs of pain at the back of her head. The way her skirt diverted from its original position. The way she impulsively reached out and gripped my arm when I suddenly smashed down on the brake. A stupid mongoose picked the wrong time to scurry across the road. Between you and me, that mongoose didn't exist. It was fun. Life was fun. The last time I felt this thrill was when Heather, a materials sciences student, joined us. But now that Heather's gone, I'm glad she's here. When she's nearby, her warmth spreads to me, and when her skin makes contact with mine, my stomach rumbles with hunger. She gets my heart pounding harder. Much, much harder. I mean, Heather liked to change in the washroom, but she always stripped down in front of her mirror. And in front of me. Heather wasn't as fleshy in certain areas as her. Heather didn't like shorts or tank tops, but she was almost always revealing the most beautiful parts of her body with us. Scars and all. We didn't like the scars, but she was gorgeous enough for us to ignore them. But the reason I wanted to take my time with her was that unlike naive Heather, her daring perceptiveness kept me on the edge. Mom and Dad skillfully dodged her suspicions better than me. This was why she misunderstood the way I bent. When the semester ended and her departure neared, I wanted to prepare a meaningful farewell gift. For that, I needed to start cleaning out some stuff from the basement, so I frequented my parents' workshop. "Sweetheart, she might come here in search of you," Mom said from behind her workbench. "She's getting ready for bed. Migraines stuck around." I didn't bother to inspect what Mom was working on. Instead, I headed to the farthest corner on the left and squatted at the basement door. Unlocked. "Dad's probably in there." "On cue," he emerged, wiping his mouth clean. "Again?" He cleared his throat and swallowed. "You'll lead her right in." I muttered a hurried apology before descending. The dirt of the cement stairs screamed under my feet, and the smell of iron kissed the insides of my nose. I inhaled deeply, like a child entering a nicely scented mall. I didn't have the luxury to feel ecstatic. This was her last night here, and I needed the room emptied in time. I rushed across the corridor, skipping the first few doors, and halting at the 7th one, on the left. I knocked out a fake courtesy and entered. She was waiting for me in the armchair that she accidentally spilled a grand frappuccino while binging her shows. No hard feelings. We just thought she'd be more comfortable in her favorite seat. Let's finish up with you today. From tomorrow onward, this room will belong to her, I said, as I took a bite from next to the remnants of my father's dinner. The fleshiest part of Heather's thighs